Well, it is grim for a lot of people, and all indications today from the RBA governor, it's not the end. One man who lived through and reported on the high interest rates of the 90s, finance expert Michael Pascoe. Nice to see you, Michael.
My pleasure.
You just heard there how much stress so many people are under. Did the RBA go too far today?
Personally, I think they did. They could have paused today, but no, it's one more thump over the head with the big baton and a warning that there's more to come. Hopefully, the governor is jawboning. He is threatening more than the Reserve Bank needs to do, because all the impact of this massive hike in interest rates won't really be felt until later this year anyway, and people are already hurting.
So if people are already hurting and the RBA governor knows that, he's talked about it, so why not just pause?
The RBA's main job, the job they've been given by the federal government, is to make sure inflation doesn't get out of hand, to try to keep inflation down around 2 to 3%. It's running above 7%. That's his main job. That's what he's been told to do. That's what he has to do.
He also said today that it's unlikely to be the cash rate peak. So he's going to go higher. The question is how much?
Look, it's hard to imagine they would do more than one more rise. And there was a little hint today that maybe they'll pause and have a look at how things are going. Because the reality is the Reserve Bank has already crashed household disposable income. In real terms, on a per capita basis, household incomes, our spare cash, has fallen further than it did during the 1990s recession. And a lot of that impact hasn't been felt yet. It's still coming later this year, when a lot of people come off those fixed interest rate loans, when a lot of those savings that were built up in COVID are going to be wiped out.
So a mortgage rate starting with a 4 is going to basically disappear sometime soon. What does that mean for people who, I mean, they've already seen their repayments go up more than 40% in the past 12 months. This is hitting the people who can least afford it, isn't it? Mostly
yes, because it hits hardest on people who have bought relatively recently, and they tend to be first home buyers who have a small buffer and therefore feel the pain immediately.
Isn't there a fairer way to bring inflation under control? We know the RBA's only got this one tool, and that's interest rates. So is there not more that our politicians can be doing?
That gets into politics, and the short answer is, in theory, yes. In practice, not really. In theory, if we had a flexible GST, if the federal government could put GST up for 15% while it wants to calm the economy, that would be fairer. But no politician wants to be accused of putting up taxes, so it's off the table.
I just heard this morning when the Prime Minister was leaving for India, we also heard the Treasurer in Question Time talking about, you know, the first interest rates, they all happened under the coalition, it wasn't us. And I felt watching that, I don't care. I don't care, I don't want to see a blame game. I want to know what you're going to do about it. But what you're basically saying is there's zero appetite for them to step in where they could make it fairer.
They could make it fairer. They could go for more price controls, because a lot of the inflation we're feeling is coming from companies taking advantage and making bigger profits. It's not coming from wage rises. Most wage rises are still moderate. But again, the politics of it is just not possible. Now, we've seen with superannuation, a tiny little adjustment, and a reasonable one, still cops all the flack in the world. Trying to do something bigger, it takes time, it takes politics, and by the time any of that happened, I think the Reserve Bank will be cutting interest rates again.
Are we going to see a repeat of the 90s?
I don't think so. If by that you mean a recession, the Reserve Bank is much more agile than it was then. I don't think the situation would be allowed to get as bad as it was. In terms of the height of interest rates, no, because I think we're already there.
OK, when does it get better?
It gets better after it gets worse, which is a perverse but true answer. It gets better when there is so much pain in the economy, when unemployment has continued to rise, when people begin to default on their loans, that the Reserve Bank can take the foot off the brake and maybe touch the accelerator again.
Not what we want to hear, but thank you, Michael.
Pleasure.
3 families with one thing in common, battling to pay their power bills. They don't want sympathy, they want help.
For Karen and son Connor, the heat is body sweating, face melting, misery.
To the point of where you feel nauseated. It's like you're living 24/7 with heat stroke, trying to get cool, putting cold towels around the back of your neck.
The mother and son from southwest Sydney can't afford to pay their power bills. It's 33 degrees today in Sydney and flicking on the aircon is out of the question.
The first year that we had used the air conditioning, the quarterly bill for summer was about close to $800. This last bill, which was a majority of summer this year, my bill was only $380. This summer we haven't had it on once.
20-year-old Connor is his mum's carer and he helps pay the bills using his carer's pension. But they say it isn't enough to get by.
Oftentimes when Connor goes to bed, I'll find him on the tiled floor in the dining room with the fan on himself, and he's just saying, "It's just too hot, Mum, in there."
To be honest, it's actually more comfortable than sleeping in my bed because that's how hot it is.
Trying to deal with the stresses of having this diagnosis, trying to deal with the stresses of the treatment, and then you're trying to get help to help you pay the bills.
David's battling cancer for the third time, coming to terms with the fact that he may not see his boys turn 13 and 15 is difficult. Securing their future is impossible.
You know, back in 2018 I had a house, I had to offload that because I couldn't afford to keep it. So my boys are with me as well, so not only am I trying to cover rent here with bills and that, but I'm also trying to cover food, not just for me, but for my boys now as well. With my electricity provider and my gas provider, I've had to set up payment plans. I am behind with both of them.
Money may not solve his health problems, but David says it would give him some peace of mind.
And you sit there and put your head in your hands sometimes and just wonder what you're going to do.
Hello.
Love you both.
Love you too.
The energy bill is third behind rent or mortgage and groceries in terms of bills that cause the most stress, according to Finder. The average quarterly energy bill in Australia is around $337. Last year, power prices were down 9%. This financial year, they're up 18%. By next financial year, it's projected prices will be up again by 23%.
I can't afford these bills. They're going to be kidding me.
Father of two, Iwan's at war with his energy provider over what he says is an overpriced bill.
We stopped using the heaters, stopped using the dryer, stopped anything that uses practically a lot of electricity. We tried to stop it completely, but it didn't make a difference.
How much was the bill for?
About $1,600. They said that the meter is faulty, that it has come up faulty, but it's going slower, not faster.
Iwan since had a smart meter installed and his bills have been slashed by more than $1,000. But he says more needs to be done to help struggling families cope with rising costs.
They're trying to cut off my electricity. They've threatened to cut it off twice now.
Can you afford to pay it?
No, I can barely afford to live in this home. I'm struggling as it is.
And if you need help, you can approach your energy provider for a payment plan. And the federal government has a website where you can compare prices and find the best deals.